Welcome to MACC Conversations, a workforce podcast from the Metropolitan Alliance of Connected Communities. Interested in checking out more MACC podcasts? Listen in on Apple, Spotify, and Podbean. I'm Laurel Hansen, MACC's Program and Member Engagement Director. I'm joined today by Clara Owen, MACC's Communications Director. Hi, Clara.
Hi, Laurel. I'm very excited to be on my first MACC podcast.
Yeah, glad to have you with me. And today, of course, we're fortunate to be joined by Sharon, Executive Director of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. We'll learn about their approach to youth development, their culture around youth workers, and how they support long-term relationships with youth. This is going to be a valuable conversation because I understand that youth work is a really crucial part of our MACC member organization's work. So happy to be here with you today, Sharon. I understand that MACC and Clara here, my co-host, we're lucky to connect with you through a completely different conversation with MACC's Honoring Native Lands and Peoples work group. So please introduce yourself to our audience and share a little bit about the Indigenous Peoples Task Force and the work that you do there.
Yeah. Bujun and Indowe Maganidog Nagamo Maingen Indishnakas Wabashashin Dodam. And so I said, greetings, my relatives. My name is Singing Wolf, but most people know me by my English name, Sharon Day. And I am the Executive Director of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. I was one of the founders of the organization back in 1987. And I came to work, I was on the board and then came to work as the Executive Director in 1990. And the first program that I began was a theater program called Ogichida Giki Nuamagi peer education program. And at that time, our primary focus was providing education and services to people living with AIDS and their families. And so we were losing a lot of people, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91. And I thought to myself, we have to break this cycle. And one way to do it is to educate the youth. If you remember, during the AIDS epidemic, we lost many of our young people, some of our most brightest, creative artists, and really people all across all spectrums of life. And so I knew the literature said peer education worked, and we thought we would use peer education in the form of theater because oral history and storytelling is part of our culture.
Yeah, right. And does the theater part of the organization still exist in that way?
Yes, it was probably about 15 years ago. And we had some new staff come on. And, they wanted to put their own sort of stamp on everything that was happening with the youth. And so they changed the program from Ogichi Giki Nuamagi, peer-to-peer education, to Ikitoan. So Ikitoan means word or to speak. Mm. And so basically the program's the same, but they rebranded it.
Oh, you got to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but it's they've added things to it, enhanced it, but it's basically the same program.
Sure. Well, you got to have that youth energy coming into organizations. Well, thank you for helping us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah. So as Laura mentioned, you and I got to connect through a completely different conversation. But as part of that conversation, you were sharing about the work of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And kind of your focus on youth and your unique approach to both youth development, but also kind of how you support the youth workers at your organization. And you talked a lot about why you were so passionate and focused on youth. And I wondered if you could just start us off by talking about why you have such a focus on Native youth as an organization.
Well, I think because, like if we were talking about the water, we all have these little clear water bottles in front of us. If we were to put a little sediment in this, a little salt, maybe even a little bit of oil, we would be polluting this water. And you can see it right now, it's like pure and crystal clear. And if we let the sediment settle, the oil might be on top, but it would look clear, pretty much clear again. But if you moved it, one way or the other, just a little bit, or stirred it up, you would be able to see all of the sediment and the cloudiness and in the polluting of the water. And so, even with the water, it's easier to keep it clean or to do prevention than it is to try to clean it up after it's been.
I love that.
So what we try to do with the youth is to prevent some of the behaviors that will cause problems for them. When I talk to kids, sometimes I say, sometimes the decision you make at 15, 16, 17 is going to affect you for the rest of your life. And so our first focus with the youth prevention was HIV prevention. And then we had a teen pregnancy where we focused on teen pregnancy. And, when the youth would come in the beginning, we didn't know anything about theater. So we hired somebody to teach us. And it was myself and, okay, your name's going to come to me in a minute. The staff person that was working with me at the time was a young person who just came out of U with a master's in public health. And we worked with youth for 3 years before we wrote the curriculum. So we had sort of bullet points to ourselves of what we thought they needed to know. And then we went about finding lessons. And so some of them were fairly simple, like basic physiology, right? We went to Planned Parenthood, and they gave us, a lesson on how to teach young people about their body, because I was having 15-year-olds coming to me and saying, Auntie, how does this work? And so some of those lessons were easy. Some others were not, like what is healthy sexuality within the Native community? What about we couldn't have a youth die on stage if we didn't have them well versed in grief and loss. So we went about like searching out elders and asking them, so what is healthy sexuality? What is healthy behavior? And they of course took us back to the creation stories. The creation stories tell us how to be in the world with everything and everyone, right? And on the grief and dying, we knew what Kubler-Ross and all those folks were saying at that time, but that wasn't what we were looking for. By then, I had gone to so many funerals. I never wanted to go to another one.
Sure.
And but then when we started to ask the elders, and I actually had at that point become initiated into the Medewan society, which is Medewan translates loosely the Grand Medicine Society. And so being a part of that, I was expected to help with taking care of somebody when they passed, which I had been doing all along with many people, being sometimes the only person with them in the hospital when they passed. There was a lot of alienation from Native people from their families, especially if they were gay or lesbian at that time. And but working through the Medewan, when somebody passed, 4 women would go in wash their bodies with cedar, and we had other things that we did, and so it was so different, because what happens in Western society is you go to the hospital, somebody's sick, then the next time you see them, they're in a coffin or their ashes are in
Right.
right? You don't have anything to do with that, but that's not the way it is with us. We're with them, and all the way through until they get returned to the earth. So that sort of mystery was gone, and we have there are other things we do, and I won't go into all of them, but it was a process, right, which was made much more sense and allowed us time to grieve before we went on to the next person.
Absolutely.
In many instances at that time, we had so many deaths, and we still do today, that you don't have the opportunity to even grieve, and then there's another death.
I love the opportunity for us to hear the origin story too, for the work that you do, and where the threads come in from all over, from the whole lifespan, and including that's just fascinating. Appreciate that.
I think it's actually a perfect segue too, of talking about, well, you can't talk about this one thing with talking about the other, and also thinking about the differences between like dominant Western culture and how we approach youth and even youth programming. But what does it mean to pursue a different path and reconnect folks to those kind of ancestral teachings and the elders and the traditions? And I think you had shared a little bit with us about kind of how you do that with the youth and why it's so important. I wonder if you could share here kind of the ways Indigenous Peoples Task Force is rebuilding culture with and reconnecting the youth that you work with, kind of through your programming to their traditions, their ceremonies, and their communities.
So, the youth that we're working with today might be third generation, maybe even fourth generation urban Indians living in the city, away from the land, away from the community. And sometimes when they would come in, we have a circle. We start with the tobacco ceremony. We ask them, who are you? And so we do the ceremony, and some of the kids would say their name, as I did in the beginning, and what their English name was, and also what their ceremonial name was, and who their clan was, and who their people were. So today, when you ask somebody who are your people, they'll tell you, for instance, all of my ancestors since the reservation era began are from Boys Fort. All of my ancestors are from Boys Fort. But in some instances, like our youth today, they may have somebody from some ancestors from Leech Lake, some from Red Lake, Blacks, or they may also be Ojibwe and Latinx, or they could be Ojibwe and Hmong, or Ojibwe and Black.
Sure.
So when they come in, they don't know that, but then they hear the other youth saying, what their name is and where they're from. And so, of course, then they go back and they ask the auntie or the uncle or the grandparents, where are we from? And so then they tell them. And then sometimes we've assisted youth to get their spiritual name, and which is very important. Both naming and the clan is very important, because when I say my name is Nagamuma Ingan Singimwal, I aspire to be like my namesake, wolves, and wolves. They take care of the young, they take care of the old ones. They live in a pack, in a society. Sure. I'm kind of an introvert, not really that social, but I can take care of people, right? I can, and also our clan, I'm Wabasheshi, the Martin clan, and our job is to protect the people. So every clan, there's 7 major clans, and there are other sub-clans underneath that, but your clan determines what your role in the community is. So from the time I can remember, the Wabasheshi clan, our job is to take care of the people. So my job at home was to take care of the younger siblings, help them get dressed, cleaned up, out the door, right? And as you progressed in tasks, then you were given other tasks, and so you watch, you observe, you practice, and then you do, right? And so my dad would say, like, your job is to take care of the family, the clan, the band, the tribe, and ultimately all of humanity. And so everybody in all my relatives, all of my cousins, we are all, what I guess you would say, like, helpers. We're on the tribal council, we're teachers, social workers, and we're all helpers. And I would say in my family there were 13 of us. We don't have any millionaires. Well, my sister Arlene was married to a guy. I guess cumulatively they were like that, but
the exception to the rule.
None of us are millionaires, and it's not because we don't have the mental capacity or the work ethic. It's what we were told was your job is to help the people, is to protect the people. So fortunately, I've been able to do that all my life. But so as these youth come in and they observe these things, they are reconnecting with the culture, right? And so it doesn't take too long, 6 months maybe. They know their name, their clan, where their people are from, and they can sing certain ceremonial songs. And we do things with them, like we make hand drums, we make rattles, and that we teach them about that vibration. That vibration is what opens up the path to the spiritual realm, where we are sending our petitions, our prayers, and in fact, like even our vocal cords are simply a muscle that vibrates, right? It's that vibration. And so they learn these things, and they learn the sort of philosophy behind, that tobacco plant, that is Sema plant that we use, Bejigo Sema, tobacco first. They learn the origin story of that. They learn, like, if you're habitually smoking cigarettes, you're abusing our relative. So none of our kids smoke. So many of our youth, come from homes that have difficulties. There may even be active addiction in the immediate family. But we have been able to, I'm not going to say like our kids don't experiment, but we've been able to get them like 99% high school graduation.
Amazing.
Yes, when you look at what the overall Minneapolis grad,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you we have, so many youth in college right now. And so we've been doing this work with 11 to 18-year-old kids for 34 years. But then we were noticing that, especially after the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that we were seeing a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds who are sleeping on their parents' couch, kind of floundering. So we created an internship program for those youth, and they come in, and out of the 70 youth that have came through that program, based on our earlier program, right? Only now it's more workforce development, that kind of thing, but the same basic tenets. We have 6 or 7 kids in college there. We have 6 or 7 of them have been working on construction in our new building, making more money than me.
Trades, I know, yeah.
We have interns placed at various community programs, and many of them have been hired by those community programs. That was we pay their salary for 2 months, 20 hours a week. And then by then they either have to figure out what else they're going to do. But some of them have been hired by those community organizations. So, this idea of, the sort of radical resurgence in the culture for these young people, it's been very good.
Must be gratifying to see outcomes like that.
Yeah, and I was at a Holiday gas station on Larpenteur in St. Paul a few weeks ago, and there was I'd taken my pup to the Como Animal Hospital. And I heard a voice saying, Sharon Day, is that you?
What's this going to be all about?
And I looked, and there's a young man. I didn't recognize him. I hadn't seen him for a number of years, but he came up to me and he said, what his name was, and he said, you probably you see so many people, you probably don't remember me. And it took me a little while to figure out who he was. And he told me he was doing well, and he has a baby, and
that's beautiful.
And he's working, and but he was one of the kids who didn't make it through the program. Mm-hmm. And when he said, "You probably don't remember me," I got in my car and I left, and my phone rang, and my grandson's a theater director, and he said, who just called me? And it was the same young person.
Wow.
And he said he's seen you at the gas station, and I said, yeah. And he said he thinks you didn't remember him, and I said, if he only knew how many tears I shed.
Yeah.
But to know that
it was meaningful in his life.
He got enough,
mm-hmm.
to, so now he even donates sometimes to the program. But
wonderful.
I always think, that, we pay a lot of attention sometimes to the ones who don't make it through the program, and yet, we don't know what their life's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
But I always think, the ones who are doing well, they need that same attention.
Truth.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
It actually kind of segues us perfectly to the next question, which is that you have such long relationships with the youth. Even after they graduate or move or transition out of your programs, you have these really long kind of you build relationships that last with your youth. And I wonder if you could just talk about why that kind of long-term investment and approach
when
matters.
We started, we asked the youth to come up with the roles and responsibilities, not only for themselves but for us. And in the beginning, I'm the executive director now, and I don't get to work with them that often. I still write their plays, but and I have interactions with them, but not like I did then. In those days, you lived, and if we went to Wyoming, we were with them for 4 days at a time.
Yeah.
But when they came up with their expectations of what they wanted from the staff was our attention. That was one of the biggest things. They wanted our attention. And so with the staff, all of the staff, I had a policy that if one of the youth comes and they want to see me, you interrupt me, whatever I'm doing.
I love that.
I'm going to pay attention. So,
yeah, I love that. I'm excited to dig in a little bit on the whole part about youth workers, right? Because sometimes they might be the forgotten piece of the puzzle, but obviously you have a dedicated team and folks who've been with you for a long time. In some instances, and I don't want to make any generalizations, but it can often be sort of put into the parameters of being an entry level type of work situation, and maybe not as many opportunities for advancement. Maybe viewed as a stepping stone into other leadership roles, but I feel like you have probably created an environment and a culture where youth workers are valued, right? And maybe they stay a little bit longer. I don't know. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about what happens at Indigenous Peoples Task Force.
No, our in fact, in the whole history of the program, 34 years, we've had maybe 4 staff We may have had like stage managers who came in and left, but in terms of the facilitators, the coordinators of the program, there's only been like 4 people in 34 years. And so that is because it is such an important, it's our flagship program. And so Brenna has a master's in public health. The first person I worked with had a master's in public health. And Brenna came to work out of college. She came to me and said, I'd really like to work here. And I said, well, go get some experience. And she volunteered with another Native program for a year. And then she came back and I hired her. And she's been there I've seen her get engaged finally, get married, have 2 children. She's been with me all of that time. And then, and she hired Kirby. He was working at White Bear Lake Public Schools, and we were in a pinch. We needed somebody, and he would drive back and forth. And finally, he said, this gas is like, and Brenna said, I want to work with him. And so he's been there for, 12, 13 years. Brenna's been there longer.
Quite a tenure.
Yeah, but they, and they've had, Brenna's also developed the intern program, and so we focus on not only teen pregnancy, but suicide prevention, tobacco prevention, and now opioid prevention. And so, they get a lot of training. Every staff person has the opportunity to go to one national conference and one local conference. And they also, Kirby's a fellow at Benchale World Theater, been there for 10 years, has a one-man show coming up this end of November. So they're able to continue their training, but this is their life's work. This is not, this is not something
it's core to who they are,
else.
Why they're here, right? Is there anything else about the approach that you take at your organization that keeps, because I think we have in our sector, we have a lot of people who are passionate and committed to their work, but maybe they don't get everything that they need in that role to make it their life's work. What do you see as a unique approach or attribute?
Well, I this personally, what I think is that all organizations who have youth workers, we ought to create a program where there's some kind of certification for that. Everything else has.
Excellent suggestion.
And then
I'm surprised that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that we also have kind of uniform pay scales. I know there are a lot of other organizations in the community, perhaps whose youth staff don't make quite as much. And we need to change that, across the board. So
now you're talking.
There's some uniform kind of, and people would stay in those positions longer.
Now we just need to organize that, make sure it happens. Yeah. So do you take a look at those pay scales too, and do some sort of thinking about how to be leading edge there? I have not. I just was sort of word of mouth, sort of thing. But in talking with some of there used to be a youth collective. Brennan Kirby used to go to, and I don't know if that's even in existence anymore. But I've talked to some of the other organizations about, we need to do this. Yeah,
I just have
professionalize it. Well, Clara, you're the one who mentioned how many MACC members have some of their work with youth.
I would say easily at least half of our members, and we have 65 members throughout kind of the metro and some in kind of greater Minnesota. Half of those at least have dedicated youth programming.
Yeah.
At kind of all different levels, and then there's more that maybe they don't have a dedicated youth program, but they interact with youth through their other programs.
Sure.
Pretty extensively.
Yeah, so hopefully we've got a good audience of some of these folks listening into the MACC podcast today, and maybe that will create more opportunities for conversation.
Yeah, I think it really is needed.
It's been such a pleasure to talk with you today. Geez, what terrific conversation with Sharon Day, Executive Director of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. We covered a lot of ground. What do you think, Clara?
It was a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad we got to talk with you today.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon, for all you do and all you've shared with the MACC Network today. I'd also like to thank the sponsor of our MACC's Workforce Podcast, the Ameriprise Foundation. Listeners, we appreciate you and thank you so much for listening. And don't miss MACC's monthly podcast episodes. Find us where you listen to podcasts on Apple, Spotify, and Podbean. Or if that doesn't work out for you, find us on MACC's website and in our Workforce Digest. We make it easy for you to listen to the MACC podcast. Have an idea for a podcast guest? Feel free to reach out to us. Thank you all, everyone. Have a great day and be well. Goodbye.